Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for joining us. This is our first session in a series about developing cross-platform mobile apps using Xamarin and Microsoft Azure with MVP Hossein Delai. Thank you, Hossein, for accepting the invitation. This is part of the summer internship program in order to help students learn new technologies and develop their skills. So, welcome all. Thank you again for joining us and good luck uh, in this initiative. So, thank you, Hossein Delai. So, you can start.
Thank you, Firas. It was nice to be here to talk about mobile apps with Azure. So today, the demo will be about how to um, start with a ready template for building Xamarin cross-platform application that could connect to an Azure backend. So you see all the flow from creating the application and host it on Azure. Then we'll move to the mobile app, which could either be Xamarin Forms application, or it could also be a Cordova application or a Java application written in Android application written in Java, or iOS application with a Swift or Objective-C. So mobile backend supports all of these platforms. Then we'll see how we could connect our mobile application to this backend. We'll do the tests locally. Then after hosting the application on Azure, we'll connect the application to the true backend hosted on Azure. So to get started here, I want to start with a quick introduction to Azure mobile apps. So for that here, I'm going to share my screen with you and show you my presentation. Go there, share screen, mobile window. And here should select our Windows VM. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Mm-mm-mm. You cannot see my screen, right? I will try again. Share screen, application window, Windows 10, share. Mm-mm. So the presentation just started. I make sure everything is going well. Not so much. Okay. Mm-mm. Not the best thing that happened in a demo. Mm-mm. Okay, maybe I can open the slides inside my Mac machine. Then I try to go to desktop, then right from here. Okay, just a moment. I'm opening the slides. Plan B. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's try again. Share screen. Start. Okay, here we go. Let's load this. Good. So Azure Mobile Apps. What is that? So Azure Mobile Apps combines the both advantages of C Sharp, which could be used on the server side and the mobile side. So here we'll be using the same language to build our client and our server side application. For the client, we can use C Sharp with Xamarin, as you know, but also for the server side, we can use C Sharp for our backend with ASP.NET, and we can host that on Azure. How we can do that? Let's take a look at the architecture of the application. So right here, I do have on this side the mobile application, which could run on a smartphone, on a tablet. It could be iOS app, Android, or Windows application. This app will connect to our backend service hosted on Azure. That backend have all the web API, which is the REST API, and those REST API will communicate with a database. So here we'll choose a SQL database, but of course we can configure it to connect with other database or with other storage options like the tables, Azure Tables, MongoDB, which is now Cosmos DB, or we can also connect it to Office 365 or even to our API, our custom API apps. Mobile apps also have the advantage of giving you authentication built in. So you can add to your application authentication with Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, Google, or access to Azure Active Directory. And this is so powerful because implementing those features in your application requires you to know the OAuth standard and to implement all the logic code, which is so heavy code and requires someone to be really an advanced level in order to create the login and the sign up features and the apps. So here with mobile apps, you get that out of the box. You don't have to write any code almost. Mobile apps also have some other cool features like the push notification, where you can send push notifications using Amazon, Apple, or Windows servers. So those are all the cool features, in addition, of course, to the offline sync. So we said that we can store our data in an online database, but we can also create a local database in our application using SQLite or any other vendor. Then that way we could have a local um, file or a local version of the data in our local database and another one hosted on Azure. That way, if the user loses connection, if he loses internet connection, then he can store the data in the local database. Then when he connects to the internet and synchronous, um, the local database will synchronize with the online database. Cool. So to wrap up, why we use mobile apps, it's extremely powerful, as we saw. So you do have lots of options available for you. You don't have to go and code that for yourself because those options are used in so many applications. So Azure mobile apps, but what if we implement those features once and let developers use them in their applications? Why developers have to re-implement those piece of codes again and again? It's flexible. It uses easy tables, so you can use Node.js backend or ASP.NET backend with app service. It provides us a closed platform client SDK. So this SDK contains all the logic code for implementing authentication, local local DB synchronization, and so on. It works cross-platform and it's on C Sharp. Cool. Now let's move to demo. And here I have started my Windows machine. And I'll go here to the Azure portal. I connect to my Azure portal, and from there, I can get all my resources. Let's try again to um, no. Oh, okay. Let's share my screen. So from here, I'm inside my Azure subscription, and you can see that I do have here my dashboard. I have all the services that I'm using from Azure. And we'll start by the first steps for creating an Azure mobile app backend. To do that, we go here to New. Then here we do have all the services provided by Azure. For us, we want this web plus mobile template, and we'll use here the mobile app. To create a new mobile app, here we need to configure an app name. So let's call it Xamarin University. Here it will have this extension Azure websites.net. We are okay with that. I configure here my subscription, and I want to create a new resource group. Let's call it with the name of my app. Then here, configure an app service. Here, depending on your Azure subscription, you might want to use the app service or the service plan that suits your the budget you have in your Azure subscription. So here we do have different options. The one selected by default is the standard, which will charge you 44 USD per month. For our demo, we are okay to use the shared or even the free tier. For that, if I go and select the shared one, hit select, click OK. Here we need to give an app for our service plan. So let's do that. We call it University Service Plan. And we hit OK. Now what Azure will do, configure the service plan, then now it will try to create the app. Once I have created click the button for creating the backend. The deployment is in progress, and that will take a while. For that, I have prepared here, I have created another web app, and once the creation is done, you will get a page like this one where you have an overview of your mobile app application. So here I called it with the new link here, xmarathon.azurewebsites.net. So if I go to that website, then I can see that here it's up and it's running. Cool. Here I can see the requests that I have tested before starting this demo. Now, what is cool with mobile app template is that you can go here to deployment and select here quick start. And from there, you can see that here you get all the platforms supported um, by Azure mobile apps. So it supports iOS, Android, and Windows, either with C Sharp, Swift, or Cordova. Here we want to use Xamarin Forms. For that, we choose Xamarin Forms, and those are each one of those contains a project sample code to start with. So if I choose here Xamarin Forms, for example, then I get here the 3 steps in order to configure my application for both sides, the backend and the client app. So the first one is connect a database. So here it tells me that I already have a data connection, but I need to add that connection to my app. So to do that from Azure, what we need to do is to go, oops, I should go right here to data connections. And from here, it tells me that I have here configured a database with my mobile app. Here I have this one, but if you have created a new mobile app, then you would have any data configured by default. But you need to do that by clicking Add, and then you choose a SQL database. Then you need to configure the database. So here, clicking Configure, you will need to choose database. Here, either you can go and create a new database if you don't have already one, but if you do already have a database, you select the one you want to add. Oops, yeah, I don't need this. So I choose the database here, which I choose it right here. Then you click OK, and that database will be attached to your mobile app, so that your mobile app, which contains the API, will recognize or will find the path to communicate with your database. So here on data connections, make sure you do have a database attached to your mobile app template. Cool. Now let's go back to our quick start, and from here we choose Xamarin Forms. So the first step here is done successfully. We do have database connection, but for the second step right here, it tells us to create a table API. Here tells us clearly that to store data in your backend, you need a table, pick a backend language below, and create a ToDo Item table API. And here we see that we do have two different options, either to choose Node.js or C# for our backend. We want to use C# because we want to use ASP.NET for our backend service. And then here I do have the button download. What this will do, it will download a project, a sample project written in ASP.NET. So let's click Save. That project contains all the code for the backend service. The step 3 now is to configure your client app. So here you do have two options, either if you want to create a new app, like what we'll do here, but if you already started developing a Xamarin app and you have an existing app, then you might want to go through this, and it will explain to you all the required code to go through connecting to this API. So let's choose here create a new app because we want to do that. And now we'll download that template and save. And now let's go and open those files in Visual Studio. So here from my Windows machine, and I go and open the files in Visual Studio. So let's launch Visual Studio, then open those files. Cool. Let's check if you do have questions. See some discussion here. Okay. Okay. So here I have already configured that. So I'll open that solution that I have downloaded from Azure. So let's open. Let's start by the backend app. So let's open that from Visual Studio. And here the first thing to do is to build your solution, because the solution that we have downloaded doesn't contain NuGet packages. So it only have the links for the NuGet packages. So we need to do build for the solution in order to download those NuGet packages. And this could be done by going to build here from Visual Studio and click build solution. That will take a while in order for Visual Studio to download all the NuGet packages for this solution. Once you have done that, you will get your project ready to be running. Here, if we take a look to the code of this application, we can see clearly here that we do have almost the same structure as an ASP.NET web application, because at the end, it is an ASP.NET application. So we do here have models, but it's here called data objects. If we take a look at our ToDo item here, it is an item that contains text and complete, and it inherits from entity data, which will be used from Azure in order to store when this data was added, to store the time, the date time, and also the date time for editing this data, and if and when this data is deleted from our database. Entity data also have all the required and all the required properties to know if our object needs to be synchronized or not. Then we do have the Xamarin context right here. So the Xamarin context will act as the context in an ASP.NET application. So it contains the connection string name, which is here configured. It's called MS table connection string, and it's configured inside the web.config file. From here, you can see the key of our connection string and then the value, which is here the connection string equal local db attached file. Then I do have um, all the connection string. If you want to test, so this is actually the connection string for your SQL Azure database. So it will point to the database inside Azure. But if you want to test your application in a local database, and a database that is in your machine, then you might want to use this um, this second connection string, which will point to a local DB. As you can see right here, it's a local DB instead of a DB hosted on Azure. Cool. So you do have the connection with the database already configured. Then here we do have the ToDo items, because by default, this application is building a ToDo item application. For that, we do have the table in which we store the ToDo items. Then we do have this method on model creating, which will be executed at the first time we create create the database. So in that case, so that means the first execution of the application. So it will do this code, which will here create the table for us. And actually, it's adding a convention for the service table column, and it's doing right here some config. We can alter that if you want. Cool. So this is for connecting to our database, and now we can use this Xamarin this context inside our controller as with MVC or with ASP.NET applications. Let's take a look now to our controllers. Here we do have the ToDo item controller, which will handle the requests and it will uh, apply changes to our database. Our controller here, you can see that the first difference with controllers in in the traditional ASP.NET applications is that it doesn't inherit from controller or from API controller. This inherits from table controller. And a table controller, if you can take a look at it by doing right click and going to go to definition, you can see that here table controller inherits from another table controller. Go to definition, and you can see at the end, table controller inherits from an API controller. So why we do that here? Because we are abstracting that API controller and we are adding some other functionalities, and we are also manipulating, or we are adapting our solution to be more easy to use in a context of mobile application. So the first thing we do here is to initialize our HTTP controller context. So we do some initialization to get an instance of our context and then get the entity domain manager to connect to our database, to our ToDo items. And here we start getting the web services. So the first web service is get all ToDo items. So you can invoke that web service by sending a get HTTP request to the following URL. And that web service you see here, another thing that is different from an API controller, it doesn't do here return db dot ToDo items, but instead we do have this called query. If we take a look at query from table controller, if we go to definition, you can see that here we do have definition for a query. And it tells here provides a helper method for querying a backend store. So instead of giving you direct access to the DB, we do here have some queries that you can write in order, or you do have a ready method to use in your app. So this is for getting all the ToDo items. For getting one ToDo item, you might want to use this web service. It will return a single result of ToDo item, and it will use lookup ID. In traditional ASP.NET applications, we use db.find by ID, but here you do have another method that wraps that logic for you. It call it lookup, and you pass your ID that will return the ToDo item that corresponds to this ID. Patch ToDo item, if you want to change, for example, here we do have each ToDo item have a text and complete. If you want to change the text, for example, or you want to change the complete from true to false, then you invoke the patch ToDo items. And here you do have a method to invoke, which is update async. You pass your ID and the item to be patched. Post, if you want to add a new item, and here you can see we do have the method insert async. So you don't need to access the DB directly, or you don't need to worry about db.save changes. It's all done within this insert async. To delete an item, you do have the delete async method, which will do that for you. Cool. So this is all the simple code for creating a backend service that do all the CRUD operations for ready to be consumed by your mobile application. Now let's try to upload or to publish this application, this backend to Azure. For that here, to do that, I go and right-click my project, and here make sure to right-click your project, not your solution, so your project, then click here, publish. And from here, you will get this window asking you for how you want to publish your app. So here I have selected to publish it as web deploy. Publish right here. So I want to publish it as a web deploy. And inside settings, right here, I have imported that publish settings, which you can get from the Azure portal by going, let's come back to the Azure portal. So here, from within my mobile app, if I go to overview, then I can get here this link that says get publish profile. I click on that, and now it will download the publish profile that have all the credentials to connect my local application or to publish my ASP.NET application to Azure. So I save that, and then I use it from my Azure or from Visual Studio to import that publish profile. Then once I have imported it, I will get here this window that gives me all the information that it extracted from that publish profile. Then I do have here the second. If I click next, then I get here the settings that I need to configure. So here it's asking for me about the connection string in order to connect my backend web API to my database. And the connection string here, I can find it already configured. So it's this value right here. So again, I don't need to change anything here. I only need to go to save and then publish the application. Click publish, then that will go and deploy the application to Azure. I already done that to save some time as here. And now our application is hosted on Azure. So if I go here to say, let's go here to click the URL for our backend, and here it tells me this mobile app is up and running as we did publish the backend. Now let's go to our mobile backend, and for that I'll open a new instance of Visual Studio and try to open the mobile backup. So what we'll see here is the mobile backup or the mobile application in Xamarin Forms, but you can also get a sample app that works not only on Xamarin Forms, but it works also for Android, iOS, or Cordova apps if you want to learn how to develop mobile applications that uses Cordova, for example, using frameworks like Ionic. Cool. So now our application is opened, and again, at the first time you open the app, you will need to go to debug or to yes, to go to build. Let's give it some time here. You will need to go to a build and then click build solution in order to download all the missing NuGet packages. Once you have done that, you will get your code ready to be run. So this is a traditional Xamarin Forms application that have a PCL project, Android project, iOS, and Windows UWP project. Here, if we take a look at the portable project, you can see that in the references, we have references for Microsoft.Windows, Azure.Mobile, which have all the logic. And this is the SDK that help me to connect my application to an Azure backend. That SDK uses Newtonsoft.json because here will be sending and receiving JSON data, so you need to serialize them and deserialize them. Also, we need to use HTTP client. It's used by the Azure SDK. So for that, here you can see that we do have the references for HTTP client and Newtonsoft. Cool. So at the first, our application will call the to-do list. If we take a look at the to-do list page right here, so our application contains only one page that have all the functionality for showing all the data, adding data, or deleting data also. So here, if I go and run this app to know what this does, so here I choose to run this app inside the iPhone simulator. Here, to say that I'm using a Windows VM inside a Mac machine. So from this Windows VM, I can connect to my Mac machine using here the iOS simulator, because we need to have a Mac machine if we want to test our app inside the simulator. Cool. So now the application is running, and right here you can see some of the items that I already have added before starting this demo. So here I have those 3 items stored in our Azure database. I can go and add a new item by going right here to item name. Since it's not working, okay, let's try to run it again, simulator. Oops, or actually maybe you can see it directly here from my here. Oops, need to quit. Okay, so you don't need the simulator as we don't have the actual simulator. So let me here go to tools, options, and within here, if you go to Xamarin, then you get here iOS settings, the option either to use the remote simulator or to use directly the iOS simulator. Here, I'll go and launch the iOS simulator. Here we go. This was faster. So from within the simulator right here, I can see that now I can add, for example, ToDo item, live Azure demo, for example. Oh, oops, the English keyboard. Let's write Azure. There we go. Cool. Now by clicking add, that item will be added to the list here, but it's also added to our backend, to our SQL Server database hosted on the cloud. So if we take a look now at that database, how we can do that. If I go back to Visual Studio right here, I can go to Cloud Explorer and connect using my Azure subscription. And from here, I get all my subscriptions. So if I go to Visual Studio Enterprise number 2, right here, I get my subscription from MSDN. And if we go to SQL databases right here, it will give me all my SQL databases. And here I configured my app to connect to this Xamarin SQL server. So I can right click and here click Open SQL Server Object Explorer. What this will do for me, it will open this SQL Server Object Explorer window automatically, and then I can expand those and I can see all the databases that are connected right here. So if I take a look at my database, so let's take a look at right here. Let's refresh those. Oops. Let's go again, and here open SQL Server Object Explorer. I need to add the password to connect to that. I can remember, and then try to connect to this SQL Server. Connect. Oops, tells me I cannot connect. Okay, maybe you can try some other options. Go right here. Oh, mm, let's give it another try. Open SQL Server. And here, actually, let's do this. Here I do have this Azure node, and from here I can select the database I want to connect to. So let's say I want to connect to this one right here. Oops, I don't want to connect. Okay. Oh, let's make sure I have selected the right database. Okay, actually here I have written the password for um, that I have used from within the Azure portal when I have created a new database, but that's not the password you need to use right here. Instead, the password that it is asking for us here, you can find it inside the publish settings file. So if I select my database, and to get the password, I need to go to the publish settings. And if I open that publish settings using VS Code, for example, let's open VS Code. This will open automatically for us Okay, so let's go and open our publish settings. From within here, I go to the publish settings that I have downloaded. Here we go, publish settings, and then we open it inside code. Oops. Actually, yes, open it in Node. And here you can see I do have um, all the parameters for my database. And here somewhere we do have the user password. So this is the password used to connect to my database. So let's do that. Let's come back to Visual Studio. And let's try with that password and hope it works. Let's try to connect now. Oops, not working anymore. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so you can see the content of the database from the application. So here, when I run the application on the simulator, this is all the data that is inside our database. Now we can do the same with the mobile application on Xamarin Forms on Android device. So here, if I go and run Visor to share with you my screen, my Android screen, then you will see that here I do have the Android version of this app running right here. So this way I do have both the Android version and the iOS version of the same application that connects to our Azure backend service. So if I go here and add a new item from the Android application, let's say Cosmos DB demo tomorrow, I go and hit add. So that will be added to the Android application, and the iOS application now is getting the old data. But if I go and refresh it by pull the data, then you can see here that new item is added now to our iOS application. If now we want to try to let's say to complete task. Let's say you want to change this one to be complete, because here we are creating to do items, and if every to do item have either completed or not. So it's now remove it from my list. So if I refresh here, you'll see that now that item will be removed, and yeah, it's now removed. Cool. From the Android also, I can do the same here using the context menu, which will display the complete here on top. So respecting the Android style and also the iOS design guideline. You can say complete. It's removed. Now if I refresh here, it's also removed uh, because both applications are connecting to the same database. So this was all about mobile apps on Azure. Let's now go and see the code. So if I go back to Visual Studio, I can go now to the code for this app. Here we do have constants, and here it have the URL to connect to our backend hosted on Azure. Then we do have our to-do item, which contains the name, ID, and done property. And here we do have all the mapping used by JSON because we call it this done complete in our backend, but in the mobile app, you can give it another name and map it using JSON property name equal, and you give the name you want to map to. Then we do have the main object here, which is the to-do item manager, which will connect to that database, and then it will try to uh, to create the CRUD operations from there. So here you do have to-do item manager and mobile service client. That client will connect to the application to our backend using the application URL. Then it will invoke get table in order to get all the rows stored in our database. Then here it's initializing our default manager to get an instance of that default manager. Then configures the current client, and it uses those in order to get to do items in this method, where here we are querying our database through the Azure backend service. Then it will get all the items for us. Note here it's querying only the items that are not done yet. To save a new task, when you click the plus button, it will invoke the insert async coming from our from our mobile service table. And here you see that we have large code is not um, not active here for managing synchronization. So you can synchronize and you can create a local SQLite database and synchronize it with your Azure database. And then we do have here the page that creates your page, and it displays here. We do have a list view for displaying all the to-do items. Then when you right click or when you long press an item on that, it will invoke the incomplete method, which will show the option for changing that to-do item to be done. And that's all the code for the mobile site to connect to your Azure apps, to Azure mobile app. So this was all the demo. I hope it was helpful. And now let's check if you do have some questions right here. So a question about adding the firewall. And here, of course, you can add the firewall from the Azure portal. Yes, you will need to do that in order to connect to the to your database. And also, it could be done automatically by Visual Studio. So when you try to connect to your SQL Server database, Azure will, or Visual Studio will suggest to you to add uh, a firewall or to configure an IP to allow your local IP to connect to that database. Yes, the password is also at the Azure portal. Yes, I might already go and check it there. Could you share with us the live when you finish? Of course, the live will be available as soon as um, I finish this webcast. Cool. Let's check if we do have some other questions. And start on configure. Okay. Cool. So this demo that we have done here, it will be available on YouTube along with all my other videos that shows you how to start developing Xamarin Forms applications and how you can integrate or how you can communicate your Xamarin application to a backend written in ASP.NET and hosted on Azure. We'll have more videos and more demos coming about those topics, so stay tuned and watch us for our next YouTube videos, and also prepare your questions if you do have questions, and see you for next time and have a good time. Bye bye.